The opinions and views expressed in the following presentation do not necessarily reflect those of GCR Progressive Internet Radio Management, staff, or our affiliates.
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Welcome to Mo Banshee's Lair, Visionary Talk Radio on GCR Progressive Internet Radio. Fair rocking your world.
And welcome to Mo Banshee's Lair on GCR Internet Radio. Tonight we have a self-help type of a show on how to make the best of your job searches, and I'm over the moon because we have John Fagazzie on, and John is the founder of Neighbors Helping Neighbors. It's a job search support group in New Jersey, but these tips are going to be so good for everybody because you just apply them to your state and yourself, and I think it's going to be a really helpful job, show tonight for job searching and trying to land, jobs and that. Anyway, they're telling me they can hear me, so we're all good to go in the chat, which is why I love the chat. Big news right now. Lou Reed died October 27th, and he's one of those guys who's known as a one-hit wonder, even though he had an incredible impact on music during the 60s, 70s, 80s. Everybody remembers him for Take a Walk on the Wild Side. He was a bisexual guy who really pushed some envelopes when he wrote that and he recorded that. In his honor tonight, we're going to play two of his songs. One will be Take a Walk on the Wild Side, and the other is going to be Coney Island Baby. And we're also going to play Mandy Patinkin. I'll bet you half of you had no idea. Mandy Patinkin is a rather talented singer. If you saw Yentl, you figured it out that he's not Mario Lanza, but he is very talented, and he has a song a recording of Brother Can You Spare a Dime, which is perfect for tonight's show. It's just very perfect for tonight's show. So there are music things tonight, and of course you all know how it goes with me. We have a bit of crazy butt news, and let me bring up some of it while I'm sitting here lost. Saving Mr. Banks, new Disney movie is coming out in December, and it's about Walt Disney trying to convince the author of Mary Poppins series to let him make a movie about it. And in the story, you find out who Mr. Banks is. Tom Hanks stars in it. I'm sure this is going to be like a wonderful, wonderful movie. Jeremy Irons, something, Night Train to Lisbon, that's coming out in November, and it's about a Latin teacher who saves a girl from killing herself and then finds a book she had on her on the ground, and it changes his life really hugely. Also, he's got Trashed. And that's a passion of his, and it's about how we've trashed our world and what we're going to need to do to reclaim it and stop from killing our world. So Trashed is going to be out on DVD, and I think they'll be putting it somewhere on the internet, but that's the name of that. It's Trashed, and it's how we've destroyed our planet. So two good movies that I'm looking forward to. Japan. What a group of people Japanese people are. Of all the problems in the world, their biggest concern is that women don't look disgusting eating a hamburger. So somebody in Japan made this napkin that you can hold up and it looks like a girl's face. So when they open their mouth really, really wide, you don't see that they're opening their mouth. It's just really funny. We've got the nuclear meltdown in Japan. We've got animal abuse. We've got garbage in the Pacific that's just floating around like its own continent, and they're worried about the young ladies not looking terrible when they eat food. So this napkin, you put it around your hamburger, hold it up to your face, and it just looks like your face. It doesn't look like a hamburger. So, who says that the Japanese are not really worried about what's going on in the world, right? George Romero, he's the godfather of the modern zombie, United Living Dead. That's his baby. He sat down with Andrew Burns and discussed his career in zombies, and praise God, he said something that I agree with totally. He said when they asked him to do a couple of the episodes for The Walking Dead, he says he didn't want to be any part of it. Basically, it's a soap opera with a zombie occasionally. And I agree. That's exactly what, in the comic books, it's a book. You're reading it, that kind of thing. But on the TV, it's a soap opera. It's just a weekly installment, and you watch these very dysfunctional people who are busy having, the girl and the boy are having it on, and they smell like dead skunks. And, I mean, it's just ridiculous. I don't even watch the show anymore. It was good when it started, but now it's just turning into this tangle of all kinds of personal relationships. And I personally am rooting for the zombies. Let's just kill them all. Fort Lauderdale. A Broward woman faces several charges after she allegedly called 911 to report drunk people at a bar. The problem is she was one of the people at the bar, and she just didn't like the other people being drunk there. So Mary Jaggers had to go to court Tuesday morning this morning. She's charged with misusing the emergency system, possession of hydrocodone, and reporting falsely that there's a bunch of drunk people in the bar. She called 911 6 times to complain about intoxicated people, and she's one of them. She was hammered. If you're gonna, throw stones, don't live in glass houses. If you're gonna go out and get drunk, don't call the police to try to have everybody else arrested. Chances are you're going to get arrested with them. And there's a sex scandal in Tempe, Arizona. Apparently, one of the former detective, Jessica Deaver Jacutz, a 13-year-old veteran of the police force, had to resign because she was undercover on a drug investigation, and when they finally got everybody and nailed it, they found out she'd been sleeping with the one guy that they were investigating, and he told them that not only was she sleeping with them, but she was keeping them apprised of the investigation. I hope she's not surprised that she got fired from this job. Anyway, they immediately suspended her, and she's gone to court, and she's going to end up, at the moment, they're not charging her with anything, but she's obviously done being a police officer. I don't make this stuff up, I just report it. And the truth is out there. This is rather cool. The Natural History Museum of London has now a special group investigating their X-Files, as they call them. And these are things that are brought into the museum that nobody has any idea what it is, where it came from, like the slime that was found at the Ham Wall Nature Reserve in Somerset, England. They still don't know what it is. They've been doing all kinds of tests on it. They said that, it's got all kinds of DNA in it, but they have no idea what this mucus is. And all I could say is, yeah, that's my first idea, is to go out for a walk in a nature reserve, find a big load of some kind of gook, and then just pick it up and take it to a museum. That's my idea of an ideal Sunday, Some of the things they have found is somebody brought in a skull a long time ago and they thought it was a saber-toothed cat from, the dinosaurs. It turned out to be a Chinese water deer, which kind of makes me wonder where this Chinese water deer came from in England, and how its skull ended up in the mud someplace. So that's kind of intriguing. There's a lot of stuff, misdiagnosed stuff, things that, they're trying to find out what it all is. And check out their site. And again, that's the Modern Museum of History in London. They call them their own version of the X-Files. It's a unit of experts who specialize in unraveling the origins of mysterious slimes, animals, and objects found in England. So I thought that was pretty cool. Our guest tonight, John Fagazzie, has a site called Neighbors Helping Neighbors. And John, welcome to the Lair.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm hoping everybody's going to let me know if they can hear John.
Okay.
I think everything's going well.
Great.
Why did you start Neighbors Helping Neighbors?
Well, actually, at the time I was out of work. This was back in 2010. And I was doing the job search like I always had in the past when I was out of work. And I found that things just weren't working like they had the time before. And I was working by myself, doing all the internet, applying for jobs on the internet, searching all the job sites, and things just weren't happening. And it started becoming, depressing and frustrating, and really didn't understand it. So I actually had seen an article in a local paper about a woman wanted to start a group to get together. So that's something I had never done before, and I went out and attended the group. And I'm a very positive person, so of course I went to the group, and what it really turned out to be was 5 or 6 people who spent the whole meeting complaining how bad things are. Well, clearly we all knew how bad things were. We didn't really want to hear about it all night, and I actually left the meeting feeling more negative than I was going into the meeting, because again, I've always seen myself very positive. So this group kind of held meetings once a month. They had 2 or 3 of them. The woman who led it had found a job, so it wasn't really organized. There was no structure to it. But myself and one other gentleman had attended all the meetings. And the last night she came in, it was just me, him, and her, and she says, listen, I can't do this anymore. And it whittled down to 2 people. And when she left, we looked at each other and said, we really thought there was a value in people getting together, helping each other. But clearly you needed it to work, and you needed to have some kind of structure. So he said to me, why don't you go around and see if you want to start something, go ahead and do that. He said, if you want to see if there's another group we could join. We just both felt that the whole idea of sharing with others your situation is a good way to attack the situation. So I called around, and there was really no other groups. I went and talked to the library director in River Edge here where I live and said, can we have a weekly room? And the whole point of weekly was it really had to be something that you were doing more intensely. The job search today is about the most difficult it's ever been in the history of our country. There aren't enough jobs, and it's not something you can attack mildly. You can't go out and just wait for somebody to call you or hope somebody knocks on your door with a job. You really have to focus yourself, have a plan, and really work at it. And I make jokes. It's very much like Weight Watchers, where if you went to Weight Watchers once a month, you're not going to lose too much weight. But when you go weekly, if you go in and you gained a pound, you're going to realize I better make an adjustment week 2, because if I continue to gain weight, I'm not accomplishing the objective. So the whole idea of our people meeting every week has a lot to do with accountability, people setting goals for themselves, people helping each other with suggestions, and getting a lot of feedback. It's almost what I liken to brainstorming. Each one of us know our background and our history, and we tend to all think the same way. And it almost takes an outsider to come in and give you some intervention to really give you ideas of, hey, maybe you could do this, and it's something you never considered or thought of. So the interaction amongst peers, and again, all the people are out of work, is just incredible. So we started up the meeting group in January 27th of 2011. And in River Edge here locally, we met for 6 months there before the idea of even opening a second location came about. But 3 months into starting the group, I landed a job myself. I found my way back to a company I'd worked for 20 years before. And it really was due to a suggestion of one of the women about using LinkedIn, which is a very powerful networking tool, more effectively. And each week suggestions would be made, and it may not hit you right then and there when people talk about it, what to do. But we essentially, you think about it, you modify it, and it just stimulates you to think differently about what you're doing and how to do it better. So, of course, when I landed the job, I felt so strongly connected to the 10 or 15 people we had meeting every week. There was no way I could possibly stop doing this. I just knew what we were doing were great. We had had 2 people before myself land jobs, so here we were, only 6 months old, 3 months old at the time, and I was the 3rd success story of the organization. So we structured, because we do have an agenda, we have an actual program we run at every meeting, that essentially anybody could take the sheet and lead the meeting. It's not a question of there has to be a leader, because it's really the participants who do all the feedback and the interaction with each other. So it's really a true support group. And the leader is essentially just the facilitator. Here we are. Go ahead.
It sounds like job searching is actually a job itself.
Oh, it truly is. And we tell people today, again, with the market being so difficult, you have to put in 40 hours a week between the researching of companies, the networking, trying to connect with people. Just sending resumes out through the internet is not a way to get a job today. Almost no company is going to hire somebody today that way. They want to know something about you. Usually you've been recommended by somebody. It's really about networking today. And what we feel we're doing is we're really in job search education, because all of us approached it the same way we did 5 or 10 years ago, because that's what we knew. That's how you got a job 10 years ago. The fact that things have changed, just like they have in every industry we're in, the job search industry has changed because of the economics of our country, the changes in the way companies deal with employees, and, you know, truly the outsourcing of jobs. There's probably 10 or 15 situations that feed into why the job market isn't good. And it's none of it is due to your fault as a job seeker. And most people feel it's their fault that they're not getting a job. They don't understand how difficult the market is. Now, again, we fight very hard to keep people motivated. We stay very positive. But the reality is, even with working hard at the job search market, there's no guarantees you're going to land a job. And many jobs today have been downgraded to consulting jobs or contract positions, temporary positions. I think our whole healthcare situation, which is a whole nother show and not tonight's show, is impacting the expenditures that companies make. So they really don't want to give people benefits like they once did. And the other issue we talk about is this is a true change to the economy. In the past, the economy got weak and then got better and things went back to normal, let's call whatever normal was. These are absolute changes to the economy, and companies have completely changed how they do business. They've changed their business models. So we don't want people to sit back just hoping, oh, well, next year the market's going to get better and I'll have a job. It's not going to happen. They really have to change how they're thinking about it, how they approach the job search, and really the amount of work they have to put in. I mean, to be hired today.
Let me ask you.
Go ahead. Yeah, please feel free to jump in.
Yeah.
I could talk all night.
Because and that's great because my asthma is really out of control tonight.
Okay, I'll help you with that.
But the whole thing about the jobs have changed, and the different parts of it. Do you, when you guys are together, do you like look at each other's resumes and stuff and pick them apart and say, this is good, this isn't good? Do you kind of do the buddy system?
We do that. And what happens is the weekly meeting is really the touch base point. And we talk about the culture of our organization. We're all volunteers. Nobody gets paid. There's no funding to this organization. And we're now up to 1,200 members with 27 weekly meetings, most of them in New Jersey, but we also have opened one up in Boston in the Copley Square Central Library, and we just opened up one in Washington, D.C. in the Mount Pleasant Library. So this is all through the networking I'm doing on a national basis. I also was appointed to a group that's a committee of 100 job search leaders throughout the country that's called the White House Neighborhood Partnership and Community Group. And I've been able to network with people all across the country. Now, clearly, our region is a little more challenged because there's so many people here that don't have jobs, and we're such a densely populated area. New Jersey is close to 400,000 people are out of work. So when people talk about percentages, and California, I believe, is 1 million too, which is absolutely incredible, the number of people that are out of work. When you get into some other parts of the country, the job market is a bit better. We're encouraging people that they may want to consider to relocate to better areas because it's going to make their job search easier. So we kind of cover everything. As far as resumes, there's a lot of people who are resume experts, and what I always say about resumes are a resume has to get you an interview. If your current resume is getting you interviews, it's doing its job. If you're not getting interviews, then you need to look at it. But the problem with resume experts is there's a lot of people who are self-appointed experts. They charge people lots of money and take advantage of them. And the truth to be known is when all the experts speak and talk, everybody knows what the bad things to do on a resume are and things you shouldn't do. But there's almost no real direction of what you should do because it's very personal to you, your experience, and the type of jobs you're going for. So your resume has to be really custom created for you. There's certainly best practices and things that are good to have in a resume. But, there's no rules that are, hard and fast and that if you do this, you're going to get a job.
Right.
Again, the resume gets you the interview. Now, if you've gotten that far, you certainly have to do a lot of other things right to be able to land that job. I mean, what we know in the Northeast here is the stats are something like there's one job for every 10 people. So that means your competition is incredible. You're competing with, 9 other people in theory for that job. So you have to stand out. You have to really be on top of your game. For many people, there's skills that are missing. Maybe they had skills that have become outdated. So they need to really work on that. So the things that keep you from getting a job are pretty multifaceted. But that's part of what the group does. Everybody has experience, and we have what I call a cumulative learning curve. Through all these interactions, we've kind of cumulatively learned a whole lot of stuff. Certainly I have, sitting in the middle of this whole organization and leading it and interacting with people every day who are what I say on the ground floor. These are the people who are out of work. There's no better customer research you could get than interacting with these people.
Yeah, let's talk about the competition. When we're talking about somebody 40, 50, 60 years old, even let's say 30, yep, they're going up against kids that are just coming out of college or schools, and those kids are willing to take much lower entry pay than somebody who's already 45, 50 years old and has a mortgage and has a family to support who's looking for more money. So right there is a huge problem with competing against younger generations of people now in the workforce, right?
It is a problem, but remember, again, the older people are challenged today, the 50 plus as we call them. But they have experience too. I'm going to tell you, there's really 3 groups of people right now. And they kind of parallel the generations that we've always talked about. Those of us, including myself, who are part of the baby boom generation. The last baby boomer turns 50 December 31st. The baby boom generation was a huge generation. It was somewhere in the neighborhood of 81 million people. And all of us who are baby boomers have competed with a large population our whole lives. We competed in school, we competed in sports, and we competed in the job market. Now, of course, as we're aging, that's going to create other issues and become problems for job getting. But let's just stay with the 3 generations that are in the workforce right now. The generation below us is Generation X. Now, this group is kind of interesting because there were 17% less of them than there were baby boomers. So these people, when they approached the job market, had 20%, 17% less competition for those jobs. So they've actually gotten promoted more easily. They've gotten their jobs more easily. And in some way, they have almost an attitude that they're better than the people that are older than them. So that's kind of one problem. But when we get down to the next generation, who is Generation Y, and these are the people who are just coming out of school over the last, coming out of college, let's say, the last 2, 3, 4 years, their population is actually larger than the baby boom population. And this is kind of the market we're after. So they're facing very much the same issues competing with themselves. Now, obviously, a company who doesn't want to spend a lot of money and would rather hire somebody new and pay them a lot less can go hire them, but these kids still are competing with a large generation, just like our baby boomers had to. So they're finding it very difficult, and I've heard multiple statistics that have been bantered around. And one of them says that 31% of college graduates are taking jobs that did not require the degree they just spent a fortune to get. Right. And in many other cases, we're hearing that only about 50% of the recent graduating classes in college are landing jobs. So when you look at those two factors, it's a real problem. And of course, they're fortunate they can go back home generally with their parents and live there. And of course, in many cases, those same parents could be our 50-plus baby boomers who are also out of work. So it's almost like the same families are getting hammered on both ends of the age scale as it relates to job market.
Right. When we talk about unemployment statistics, and I've been saying this for years, that they're smoke and mirrors, because when they say, oh, the unemployment rates went down, that doesn't necessarily mean they got jobs. That means they're not getting benefits anymore.
That's correct. And that's kind of happened here in New Jersey. I know it's a very sore subject for me because, again, not that we want to be negative, but the fact is our people have to have an honest appraisal of what they're up against. So almost every month this year, the unemployment rate went down. But when you looked at the number of jobs were not increasing at the rate that was equal to the drop of that rate. And clearly it was because people were out of work much longer and falling off the benefits. The other problem with the unemployment stats is that they use different things that they measure. So you can't even take one set of stats and measure it against another because they're coming from different places. And what's kind of interesting right now, we're sitting in a window where because of the government shutdown in Washington, a lot of the unemployment stats are actually late. So in fact, I believe we see stats on Friday that we should have saw before the election. So all the incumbents had a bit of a breather here that whatever the situation is, nobody got to report on it before everybody went out to vote today.
Yeah. And by the way, everybody, Christie is the governor again in New Jersey, which I don't think was going to surprise many people. It's politics as usual, so I don't think that's a big surprise. But you're right.
For us,
not hearing that things have not improved did help all the politicians out.
Yeah, but the real issue today is that to fix this job situation, we're going to need more jobs. The economy by itself is just not going to magically get better, and everything's going to go back to the way it was, and everybody be back at work. The other factor that's going on is that people who are landing jobs are landing contract jobs, many of them without benefits, and even the people who are lucky enough to land a full-time job with benefits, typically companies know there's a supply and demand glut out there. So they're probably only getting paid 80% of what they should be getting paid for their experience because companies can do that. They're taking advantage of this job market glut. So even people working today have 20% less to spend in the economy. So let's not just focus on our job seekers. Let's focus on the fact that the economy is being shrunk in many places. So all these things need to be stimulated to really get jobs back in the system to get people to spend.
Right. And with this, we're going to take a break because the commercials have to be played.
Got it.
And we're going to come back and we're going to focus on what we should do right when we're looking for a job, when we're searching, and all of that. And
Sure.
And we'll be right back with John Fagazzie, and we'll be talking more about specifically what should you be doing to get a job in today's market. And we'll be right back.
if you're not crazy, just a little unwell like I am, join me on Friday nights from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern for Schizophrenic with Blondie, right here on GameCon Radio. Stop by and see just how crazy Blondie can be. Hope to see you there.
I know they've all been talking about me. I can hear them whisper, and it makes me think there must be something wrong with me.
And welcome back, and that's our little tribute to Lou Reed, who passed away on the 27th. Lou Reed was born in March 2nd, 1942, Brooklyn, New York. He died in New York. He had a liver transplant, which in May, which did not work well. The guy had a rough life, and we were just talking, John and I, about him. And, these guys, they burned the candle on both ends, and then they built a bonfire, and they threw the candle in and said, hey, let's see what happens. And, he was 71 years old, which is amazing that he made it to 71. He was a poet. He was a poet first, but he was very edgy, and when he wrote Walk on the Wild Side, that was like, wow, for him to be talking about transvestites and giving head and all of that, that was very edgy for that time period. So we're remembering Lou Reed tonight, a New York boy who, he was a one-hit wonder. God bless him, God comfort his beloved, and I'm sure he's rocking in heaven now. So our guest tonight, John, is talking about what we're doing wrong, what we're doing right on resumes. So what can we do right? What are some things that you tell people who come to you and say, look, I'm not getting any kind of bites. I need a job. What do I do now?
Well, we talk a lot about today, chronological resumes are almost outdated because what's happened now is that so many jobs have changed. Job titles have changed. A lot of times industries, a position like years ago in the food business, which I worked in, everybody was a buyer. Then they developed what they called category management, and all kinds of other titles come into play as time goes on. So you have to make sure that obviously your titles are up to date. And we really encourage people today to talk more about their skills, to look at what is the skills in the jobs you did that you were good at, because that's what somebody's really hiring you for. Because a number of jobs that are one-for-one matches today are very, very few and far between. And there's been so much consolidation in almost every industry that even in the food business, in the New York market, there probably were, 200, 300 buyer jobs. Today, there's probably 50. So for somebody to continue to work in an industry where these jobs have been lost through consolidation, you really have to say, well, what is it I do well? What kind of manager am I? What kind of skill set do I have? And how does that apply to other types of jobs that may be out there? So we talk a lot about having a skills-based resume. The other problem today is that because of the internet and electronics, every company who posts a job gets 800 to 1,000 resumes in a span of 1 or 2 days from posting. So companies are overwhelmed with work and with the amount of resumes. Now they have computer software that reads the resume, so people aren't even reading them. And the big trick to that is talking about keywords. If your resume doesn't have the words on it that they're looking for in their job description, your resume is going to get kicked out by a computer and never see a person's eyes. And the other factor that's going on today is there's a lot of talk about the hidden job market. Because again, companies have less people working there. They've scaled down. They've tried to be more efficient. But at the end of the day, people are wearing more hats in every job they do. So even from an HR perspective, they don't have the time to be chasing 1,000 resumes, even if they have computer software. So what we're finding is there are jobs that are being filled without even being posted. So what that means is it really requires people to network, to have a plan, to say, these are the companies I'd like to work for, to really start following those companies on the internet, to start connecting with people on LinkedIn that either work for those companies or know people who work for those companies. Because for you to break out of the clutter of those 1,000 resumes in the pile, you need to make a connection, a personal connection, for somebody to take a few extra minutes and look you over and say, hey, this person has some skills that we could use. And that requires...
I'm going to interrupt you. I'm going to interrupt you. You said internet and networking. You got a network and you listed internet. This would be a good time to say, if you've got pictures of you drunk on your arse, or looking like a slob, or chatting up the fillies or the boys and flirtatious, you want to clean all that up, because one thing I do when I get clients that call me for help and such is I check them out. I want to know what this person is, who they are that's contacting me, and I try to warn people all the time. Your bill collectors are looking you up. They're looking up your Facebooks, your social medias. They're looking at all of this to find out where you are, what you're doing, and everything they need to know about you. Your personal life is no longer personal, so clean up your Facebooks and your social media stuff.
It goes beyond that. It's don't put it up at all, because even if you delete it, if somebody else took your photo and you don't know it and shared it, you can't clean that one up. Mm-hmm. The other issue today is, social media is very important to all companies in their business, but they're also putting jobs only on social media in many cases. And again, LinkedIn, there's actual sites that do nothing but social media posting of jobs, because they're actually screening out people who are not comfortable with social media, because they believe that's going to be something that every industry, every job is going to need a full understanding of how you really do social media and how companies connect with their customers through it. Some of the other factors that ties into this is people who are older think they're going to change their resume, put a photo up when they were 20 years old, and do all these tricks and gimmicks to try to camouflage their true age. And the fact of the matter is that when you walk through that door for an interview, they're going to see you. So why would you want to waste your time? And if a company was not going to hire you because you're older, they're certainly not going to hire you because, you put your younger photo on your resume or your LinkedIn profile and done all these things to make yourself appear to be younger. Right. So we tell people, be honest. There's no reason not to be honest. But you then have to really work hard at, getting around the fact that your age, for some people, age is a problem. Some people have not kept up with technology. If you don't have at least basic technology skills today, you can't really work. Even our group members, we have group members who don't have email addresses, and we tell them right at the beginning that we can't even help you without an email, but you're clearly behind the eight ball, because even for low-skilled jobs and almost every job today, people expect you to at least be able to do email as a basic skills function.
I'm going to tell you something right now. My daughter has my granddaughter in school, and everything is done by email. The school contacts her with everything going on in that school. Don't forget today is this. Don't forget today is that. They mass email. You cannot survive without email now.
Well, it's efficient. It's just like me. There's no way I could personally call 1,200 people on the phone and interact with them as it relates to our meetings. So we put all our stuff up on our website. I do want to mention our website. We actually got voted one of the top 100 career sites by Forbes.com readers a couple weeks ago.
Congratulations.
And it's pretty good, because I do it myself and I'm a hacker. But the information there is extremely valuable, and people have used it and really benefited from it. Our website is www.nhnusa.org. And again, there's many tabs, many pages, and we really encourage people to get into it. We have a link with all kinds of different job search links for all different fields, different categories, government jobs, temporary jobs, artistic jobs. There's hours and hours of my time that I put this thing together. And getting acknowledged was really pretty special, because we didn't even know we were being nominated.
That's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's People laugh at me when I say, they say, why do you do what you do when you don't make any money from it? Right. Somebody has to care. Someone just has to care. And I'm seeing people, they don't care anymore, and it's all very, I worry about myself, dog eat dog type thing, and I've never been that way, and you're not that way either. So thank you for caring. That's a huge thing.
The thing today, the ideal scenario is that we can do something commercial that can help pay for us to do this kind of work. I think it's very important. I think, again, in a bad economy, donations are down at all kinds of charities. So charities that have done a lot of social needs for people are also challenged today, and that's a huge problem. Our government, we know, wants to keep cutting back what they spend to help people, and at some point, there's no safety net here. So it really depends upon volunteers to step up and do that. And I have to tell you that the reward and the great feeling of helping people is incredible. And if you help a job seeker back to work, you're not really just helping that one person. You're helping everybody in his family who's suffering from job situation. There's a lot of collateral damage from people who are long-term unemployed. I personally have been through a lot, but I don't sit around and cry about it. It's all well documented with the articles that have been written. But you have to pick yourself up and go out there and hit the ground running, because nobody else is going to do it for you. We talk about people have to own their job search. This is not something you can come to someone and they're going to do the hard work for you. You're competing, again, with many people. It's like sports. You have to play job search in the major leagues to get a job. If you're a minor league job searcher, you're not going to be very successful. So if you need to improve your skills, improve your networking ability, it's very important. But we have 353 success stories, which is a link on the website where every one of them is documented for what we did. And beyond the people that have been successful, we've helped keep people motivated. Because when you're getting rejected constantly and you're sending out resumes and you don't hear back from anybody, it becomes very isolating and it becomes very depressing. So the whole idea that these people in our support groups can get together with peers of theirs who they get to know over time, and they help each other get through that. That guess what? That job wasn't for you when you didn't get it. Now you got to forget about it and move on to the next job. Many people.
One of the things that I think people who are accustomed, say they worked for 20 years at a job, is they don't think out of the box. They look for exactly what they're into.
Absolutely.
And that's a big danger zone, right?
Yes, and that's one of the first things we do. It's almost like, we give some tough love too. There's times we have to throw a cold bucket of water on people, not figuratively, not literally, but figuratively, that we tell many of those 20-year people, because it's sad. They've given their whole life and loyalty to one company for 20 years, and then when it's time for loyalty to come to them, it's not there anymore. And they hope, I'm just going to get a job to get me 15 years to retirement, and that may not happen. And matter of fact, it's very possible it's not going to happen. So we have to kind of get people in a new mode of thinking that you may need a series of 1, 2, 3-year jobs. Most companies today are not hiring people on long-term commitments because those companies themselves aren't long-term committed. Years ago, a company would go into a new market and they'd give it 5 years, and if they were an innovator, they'd take advantage of being the first one in the market. Then other competition came in. The whole technology revolution has sped up everything. So now what happens is, markets develop in a year, and next thing you know, there's the next new guy a year later. There's no 5-year plans anymore for people out there.
Yeah.
And most of the bankers.
Question.
Go ahead. Sure. Great.
We have a question before I lose
That'd be wonderful.
Tula is in Finland, and they're going through the same thing we're going through.
Yeah, it's
and
a global.
She's asking. Yes, it's a global problem right now. That's why I wanted to have this show. When I heard about you, that was my first thought. What if you're very educated and the only job you're getting is sweeping floors?
Well,
how does education play into this?
Well, here's the problem. Here in the United States, and I don't know what's happening in Finland, if you have education, they won't give you that job to sweep the floors. it's very hard to get a job below your skill level because there's still this fear that you're going to stay for a short period of time and then move on. And it's not even that dramatic. I mean, just minor levels of experience differences can really hold people back. But what we tell people is you're better working than not working, because keeping in mind that networking is the key, that even temporary jobs, and we honestly encourage our volunteers, if they can, that rather than do nothing, be out there volunteering. Now, certainly don't be volunteering 40 hours a week and not be doing your job search. That's not going to help your situation. But by volunteering, you have an opportunity to meet other people. You can put that on your resume. Just because you didn't get paid doesn't mean you're not performing an important function. And you might be able to do something you never did before. You might get to do PR where you never did PR for a volunteer organization. And if you're good at it, it becomes a positive that can be added to your resume that you didn't have before. But most importantly, you're going to network with people. Well, we just, we're a year anniversary out of Sandy, and I encouraged all our people. We have 5 meeting groups down in the Monmouth area, and that area was hammered and devastated during the storm.
Yes, we're here. Yes,
I know, and we encouraged our people to get out there, and there was actually some short-sighted people who challenged me and said, "Well, why would we want to volunteer?" And I'm saying, "Are you kidding me? You could be at a food table giving out food, and the man next to you is the chairman of some major corporation. And the fact that you're there helping is a character endorsement." We talk about that even with our group. We have volunteer leaders who help lead our groups at each level. And the fact that you're out of work and you're still taking your time, certainly you're doing it to help yourself, but you're also doing it to help other people. That is a pure volunteer situation. And it's really something, again, on your resume that's a credential of your character that I don't think you can get any other way. There's very few measurements of people's character that you're going to get from working at a company or working, in a government office somewhere. So certainly volunteering is very important, and the networking that can come from it is amazing.
Yeah, let's just the idea, because Tula's first language is not English, is that you're going to volunteer at places, and maybe all the people who are doing well will volunteer. Like bank people and that. So you volunteer, you volunteer there, and then somebody's talking and says, "Gee, I need a new person for this," and they say, "You know what? I met this person volunteering, and I think that they're really capable. They seem to handle themselves well. They, they were sober. And they're talking you up, and maybe you can get a job through that person." Talking about not getting jobs that are less, when Jersey Central Power and Light went out, and I'm talking 30 years ago maybe, or 25 years ago. Anyway, Teddy had to go out on the picket line. He did not vote for it, but the company, they went on strike. And he started going around to all the places around here looking for part-time work, because when you're on strike, you don't get paid.
Correct.
And everybody said the same thing to him. They said, "Why would we hire you? As soon as the strike's over, you're going to leave."
Right.
So that was a big, huge problem then. Thank God my daughter was waitressing, and she was holding everything together because she was the one bringing home the money, Yeah. So that's kind of like a double-edged sword. But right now in today's economy, there are people who have Princeton degrees, and they're slinging hamburgers in Wendy's because they've got to pay the bills. So not getting a job equal to your education, you can't be so picky.
Correct. No, I agree with that. And the other issue too is that you're better being, again, out there. And I think even in the case of your Finland person, the fact that you're sweeping floors, let's just say, for example, it shows what kind of person you are too. That even though you're an educated person, you're willing, you're hardworking, and you're dedicated. It doesn't mean that's what you want to do from now on, but it's a fact that if you had to do that to feed your family, again, it's something it's a credit to you as an individual.
Yeah, you'll do it. You're not too proud to take anything to make sure you accomplish your goals.
But the problem is really more that companies won't even give people that opportunity today, and that's kind of sad.
Yeah, that's another huge hurdle. In the old days, you used to go into a place and say, I'm looking for a job, and they'd hand you a job application, and you hand it back, and that's not how it's done anymore. It's very hard to even get your foot in the door with an application or a resume, right?
Yeah, and think about this. I've talked about this before, because everybody knows there's not enough jobs to go around. So now here I'm working in a company, and I don't really want to mention who they are. People can figure that out by reading my stuff. But if there's a job to be filled, they're going to want to give it to somebody they know. They're not going to hire a stranger. So if it's somebody's daughter, somebody's cousin, somebody's friend, somebody that they worked before, so just the hiring manager would have a list of people that he'd like to give it to. He may want to hire somebody he worked with before because he wants to be able to trust that person isn't going to cause him problems for him to keep his job. Because even though it's bad for the job seekers, the people who have jobs right now are probably doing double duty because most companies have cut back and put more work on everybody. And they know there's no loyalty to them either, so any given day they could be let go. So there's a huge paranoia of people even who have jobs that they want to keep them. And they'll do several different things. One, they may hire down. They may not want anybody that's too smart or capable coming into a job to challenge them. But they're also going to look to fill the position with somebody they know, somebody they trust. Their boss may want to fill it with somebody he knows. Now, if your boss came to you and said, hi, my cousin so-and-so is going to get this job, you're going to tell him, no, he's not. I'm going to hire somebody else. And it can even go beyond that to customer relationships. For some types of companies, hiring an executive of a company who buys from that company or who does business with that company could be a way to ingratiate yourself. Now, it has other pitfalls to doing that. So when you really get down to it, people who have a job to hire have like a currency. It's a currency they're going to put into play. So obviously, if you don't know anybody and you're going to walk in the door, fill out an application or send an email to that company, you have no shot at getting that job. I talked to an expert.
So what do you do?
You have to network. You have to meet people. And what it really comes down to, it's not who you know. It's who you know that you can connect to me. So first I have to meet you, and you have to say, hey, John's a pretty smart guy. Because many people are not going to recommend people just for fun. Their reputation comes into play here. And some people are even more possessive of their network than others. So they're going to make sure that they've kicked your tires before they say, hey, I'm going to recommend you to my friend who has a company or to one of my clients. They don't want to do that, have an embarrassment, have a problem, and then have it hurt their business. So you have to get out and meet the first connections in your networking, and then you have to show them that you're capable and you're, the type person who they'd be very safe in recommending. The whole idea of LinkedIn, it's like not who you're connected to, but who they're connected to. And I could give you story after story of how this all works, and it does work. I was told by one job search expert that when a company's ready to hire a position, there's already 3 or 4 people who have lined themselves up before the job even became available, because they're talking to people and they find out, oh, we're going to be making a change here. So they're getting themselves known and getting themselves positioned for that position before it's even posted. So they clearly have a leg up on getting that job. And of course, they obviously know somebody. We used to always talk about it's not what you know, it's who you know. Well, today you have to still know stuff to do a job, but who you know and networking is still the critical piece to the equation.
So would you say, well, it goes back to what we said in the beginning. It's a job to look for a job, but you have to keep apprised of situations opening up. Correct. And then try to get yourself into a position to even be considered.
Yeah, one simple thing. It's kind of interesting. Many companies have employee referral programs. So they ask their employees if they refer somebody, they'll pay them a bonus of some sort. And some of these bonuses are very minimum, but some of them go pretty high. There's a bank in New York of somebody I know who's one of our success stories who landed with a bank where the employee referral is $4,000 if you bring somebody into the company. The person has to stay there, obviously, for 6 months or a year, whatever the rules are. So what we tell people to do, and using LinkedIn is a good way to connect with people and companies, to first do your research and see if the company has a referral program. And you look on their benefits page. It's not always going to be out there, but that's one of the things you can do. You can talk to people within companies that you know and say, hi, I'm just curious if you have a referral program. The reason this is important is that if you just send your resume through the website, nobody can qualify to get your referral bonus. And it really would help dramatically to have an insider pushing for you. But it also helps beyond that. Let's suppose that job's already going to go to somebody in the company and they're posting it just to see what's out there or to compare the market to their internal candidate. It's very important for your time to know you have no shot at that job and move on, because your time is valuable even when you're out of work. And for you to spend a lot of time working towards a job that you have no chance at getting, that insider can tell you that too, because they're going to know it being an insider. And they're not going to want to waste their time because they know there's no bonus to come from. So one of the career coaches we met through San Diego told our group that when she came out to visit her family and did a presentation. It was pretty powerful because most of us would just send our resume to a website and not even think about the whole referral bonus process.
Mm-hmm. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, I'm putting down use LinkedIn, and it's LinkedIn, the network
.com.
thing.
Yeah, it's free. We recommend free. There's no reason to pay for the service. They have upgrades and other things, but everything you need to do, certainly for job search, is free, and we encourage people to do it. We also have a Neighbors Helping Neighbors LinkedIn group, which you can get at through our website, and we have, I guess we have 2,600 people there. 1,200 of them are members, and the rest of them are friends of Neighbors Helping Neighbors, people with jobs who want to help out other people, career coaches, recruiters, HR people for companies, and people are posting articles about all the same kind of subject matter from different services all day there, and we have members who post jobs there. So it's an online, community for our group, which allows us to really reach people everywhere in the country. And honestly, the woman in Finland could join it, and a lot of what's put on there would be useful for her too.
Yeah, actually, I have a LinkedIn account myself, and of course, everybody who's watched Ghost Hunters now gets a hold of me and says, "Oh, endorse me, And I tell them, I've never worked with you. I have no idea who you are. I will friend you, but I'm not endorsing you.
Yeah, endorsing thing's kind of odd. I've got a lot of endorsements because between my professional network that's in there and this Neighbors Helping Neighbors network, people are endorsing me left and right. So I don't know in the long term what that's really going to mean to anybody. But for me, it's kind of interesting. It's almost like market research. It gives you a sense of how people see you. So the categories that come up on top is kind of like how most people see what I do or what my skill sets are. So again, it's a tool. It's not something that's going to get your job. I think recommendations are very important. Somebody who did work with you who can speak to that. I have a career assistant, career services dean who we do some work with Monmouth University, and he put up an incredible recommendation for me, and that's from the work we've done with his university. And again, he's comfortable to do that because he met me in person. He's seen me speak to groups of students about this space, and he's following all the work we're doing and loves what we're doing. So to get a personal endorsement of somebody who you work for, somebody who you work with, or somebody even who's a customer client is much more powerful. And again, that's part of the whole efficiently using LinkedIn. You really need to join at least 45 to 50 groups. You can get those for free. And the more groups you're in, the more people will see you. LinkedIn's about building your network. It's about the more people who see you, that's better for you. Some people use it like it's a private address book, and they'll only connect with people they know for 20 years. And that defeats the whole purpose of social marketing, honestly. So, but again, that's their choice, and that's fine. I do a quick analysis when somebody's new in our group. I'll look at how many LinkedIn connections they have. And the way LinkedIn works is once you have 500 plus, you don't see them anymore. I have 4,700 connections. There's people with 11,000 out there. But what we really suggest to people is get yourself to at least 500. and get yourself into 40 to 45 groups. Because if somebody's going to look at you and say, does this person understand LinkedIn? You can quickly tell that somebody with 20 connections isn't really using it and doesn't really get how the networking works. Right. And it's beyond job search. It's if you're in a business and you want to build clients, there's nothing more powerful than using this as a tool. Again, it's a tool. It's not an end-all to everything, but it's certainly a tool to get you exposure.
Let me interrupt a minute. Because we have to go to break, but you know, back in the 70s, there was this big scam going on where you paid this guy like $20, went into their office and looked through their listings of apartments or homes for rent and stuff like that. And I think it's coming back now, but it's for job searches. Do you tell anybody, is that even a suggestion to go to one of these job search places and pay for it? Or
I think you got to be very careful. I think, again, there's a lot of people out there who are taking advantage of people who are out of work. And they're very desperate. I mean, we talked before about resumes being done. I mean, we know people that are charging $1,300 for a resume. We had people paying $300, $100. The numbers are all over the board. And the sad thing is the one gentleman who had just paid, I think, $400 or $500 to have a new resume done, went on his first interview or sent it to the recruiter, and he looked at it and said, this is garbage. And he had just paid somebody to do it. So here's the fact, like there are coaches and career people who are true professionals and have credentials. But the trouble today, it's like the garage mechanic. You can always get the kid across the street to work on your car. It doesn't mean that's the right thing to do. And he could charge whatever the market would bear. And that's kind of the problem. There's a lot of people feeding on job seekers because they're having such a hard time. And that's what my goal is, to educate them. And we educate them about this kind of stuff. A lot of the multi-level marketing programs are absolute scams. If you're lucky, you'll make money. And they sell this thing like it's going to be a career or a job. And we actually wrote rules for the organization that they're not welcome at our group. They're not bringing jobs. They're bringing a Ponzi scheme. Right. And not that some aren't better than others, but even I had one gentleman who reached out for me after he read the New York Times article on me, and he started down the road as if he was going to help me, with my situation. And it turned out to be some liquid vitamin program at the end of the day after a whole lot of dancing in the beginning. And it was very upsetting. So I finally said, he's been doing it for 3 or 4 years. And I finally said to him, how much money did you make last month? Tell me, I want to know. And I believe he said $1,000. Well, $1,000 a month after you've been doing it for 4 years is not a full-time job. It's not a career. But yet they sell this promise. And if you go to them, they all run the same way. There's one guy whose wife's quitting her job. He's sitting by the pool making millions. It's all bullshit, Mm-hmm. But again, people are very vulnerable.
Yes, and that's the really sad part of all of this. And the tighter things get, the worse it's getting. And we're going to talk about that when we come back. We need to go to break. And when we come back, if anybody wants to call in, the number is 732-707-7709. If you have a specific question, you can ask there or come into the chat room at GCR Internet Radio, GCRInternetradio.com. There's a chat room. You can post the question there. Again, it's 732-707-7709. But wait until we get back if you're going to try to call. And we'll be right back.
There's no place like home. 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 There's no place like home.
This is Mo inviting you to visit me at my lair. Mo Banshee's Lair Visionary Talk Radio airs every Tuesday night live on GCRInternetradio.com. Tune in at 9 p.m. Eastern Time Zone. Topics A to Z, Mo Banshee's Lair on GCR Internet Radio. We're rocking your world.
Just try to stay out of my way. Just try. I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
That was Mandy Patinkin, and he was singing Brother, Can You Spare a Dime, or Buddy, Can You Spare a Dime, as it's known. I happen to think it's one of the best renditions ever made of that song, but it's getting dangerously like that. That was from the Great Depression, that song, and now we're in a depression as far as I'm concerned. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I talk about this all the time. I believe we're in a national crisis. And the fact that the people who are in power, don't really want to acknowledge it is a big mistake. And the other issue is it's no different than any other national crisis. We're going to need Republicans, Democrats, and independents to work together to fix this. This is not a fix that can come from one side. So that's kind of the message we have, that this is in everybody's best interest to really do the things that need to be done here to get this thing fixed.
And people are so anti-big company right now. They say, why are they giving these companies tax breaks and that? But you see, if you don't give them some incentive to come into your state, which is what happened in New Jersey, they move out.
Well, we lose.
With them go the jobs.
No,
right?
Absolutely. But I think the incentives have to be to create jobs. We know that many companies are building global businesses. They're keeping their money in other countries. And there are companies who are based here in the United States. And there's that whole controversy that they just continually talk about but never deal with, that there's a tax on bringing your money back into the United States. Well, the fact is, big companies aren't paying the taxes anyway. They have all the ways around it. So to have that as a barrier for people to bring money back is ridiculous. So maybe you could say, hey, for every dollar you bring back, as long as you create a job here, there'll be no tax. And wouldn't we be better with jobs than a tax we're really not connecting? Right. A lot of people think small business, but the truth is small business gets hurt. When Hertz moved out of, it's moving out of Park Ridge, New Jersey, and we're losing 500 jobs down to Florida. Florida paid $19 million to get Hertz to move to Florida, and they're going to build them a fancy new headquarters. It's kind of hard to imagine that money, that a fancy new headquarters is a priority in today's day and age. And of course, I lived in Florida, so I know the school system down there are terrible.
Right.
So at the end of the day, you're not doing the employees any service taking them to Florida. Yeah, they'll have great weather. They'll all have, great tans, probably skin cancer, but their kids are not going to be kept up with the national market. But here's the story. The story is those 500 people who leave Park Ridge, New Jersey are going to hurt the housing market. It's going to hurt the cleaners. It's going to hurt the restaurants, the delis, the lunch places that those people ate at. So small business isn't really in a position to add jobs to solve the economic problem right now. The only companies that can do that are the large companies. And they're finding record profits right now. And unless the government, honestly, and this has to come from Washington and state leadership, unless they give incentives, these companies are not going to create jobs. They just have to make the incentives be written where clearly the jobs have to be created. It can't be some way like in the banking industry where they took the money and paid everybody bonuses, It has to be a smarter program that's built where if they truly do it, we're going to get the results back. The incentives would be worth it to put our people back to work. I mean, we know in New Jersey, there's somewhere between 15 to 17% of the people that are not working. An economy and a market and a community cannot survive. And that's part of our motivation of our Neighbors Helping Neighbors. We really reach out to the business community and the local business people that if you have a job to fill, wouldn't you be better filling it with somebody from your neighborhood? Isn't it better if your neighbor down the block got back to work? Because ultimately, him being out of the work is going to drain you too in some way. It's going to drain the social services in your town. It's going to drain your neighborhood. He's not going to keep his house up to speed because he can't. It's not his fault. He can't because he doesn't have a job. So the whole idea of Neighbors Helping Neighbors was just that. The neighbors who can help their own neighbors is a great place to start. And if we can get this pay it forward movement going all over, I think we can certainly help. But we know, again, we need more jobs. Very qualified people are not getting jobs because there are no jobs, not because they're not capable.
Right. Let me ask you, relocating, that's a possibility if you're, say, a nurse. and you find out there's a shortage of nurses out in Oklahoma, and so you can relocate out there. But for a lot of families relocating, and this goes back to New Jersey, it's the immigrant state. I try to explain that to people. New York isn't actually the immigrant state. It's New Jersey. People came in through Ellis Island.
Right.
They walked 50 feet into, Union Avenue, Union County, and that's who we all are. My entire family are Irish immigrants.
Right.
And so we're very densely populated here.
Right.
I said, didn't you realize there was a whole country there, Mom? There was a whole 3,000 miles you could have gone and found. No, she liked New Jersey. It rains. It's just like Ireland,
Right, similar
it's just like
climate.
home. Yeah, it's a similar climate. It really is, the Garden State. But for a lot of people relocating, leaving family, it's just more than they're ready to accept. And I think we've hit times now where people really have to get out of their comfort zones, right?
No, absolutely. I mean, here's the issue too, and we understand that many people are caring for family members, so that certainly is a factor for them. But many industries, our pharmaceutical industry, has been hammered, and the pharmaceutical companies that did move those jobs to other states. And you have to do research. Everybody should know their business, where the center of that business is, and if the center of the business is no longer here, then if you want to work in that industry, you need to go there. There's clearly industries, obviously, that have disappeared totally, which is, a whole different problem. But I do think that the other issue here is that our area continues to lose population. They're moving to southern states and western states. And that's making it harder and harder for the businesses that depend on population to be successful. So every year, as the population shrinks, the retailers are having a harder and harder time making money. Their business is shrinking, so clearly they're going to shrink their workforce. So it makes a lot of sense that if Florida is a growth area, that you're going to have a much better time going there. You're going to have a better time going out west, not California necessarily, but some of the other states that are growing. And you need to know where really the industries that you have expertise in are, because you may not be, maybe the industry was headquartered here years ago and now it's migrated somewhere else. But that's kind of a life choice you have to make, and you may have to do something different here. We talk to a lot of people about becoming entrepreneurs. They may have to open their own business, and as we know, not everybody has the talents or the stomach for their own business. But if you have a certain kind of skill that Fortune 500 companies no longer need or have enough of, and they're not going to hire you for, you might need to now focus your business at smaller companies where you may have to work for 2 or 3 companies doing their books if you're a CFO. And maybe if you're fortunate, you can get enough business between those 3 to make the kind of money you would have made working for one Fortune 500 company. So yes, I think comfort zone, you're just not going to be able to do nothing and keep doing what you were doing. But what you try to do is to be smarter and have a plan where there is an end result. Clearly, to try another field that's also shrinking or having jobs lost left and right isn't a good move either. There's a lot of move to education. There's just lots of places you have. That's part of the whole research and analyst you have to do.
Okay, Smoochie is saying in the chat they are encouraging folks to look into vocational technical schools for education that might lead to a job a little easier. What are your thoughts on re-educating or vocational? Because my son was doing plumbing. Okay, he was in plumber school, and the whole bottom fell out, and you couldn't get a job here. He was an apprentice. He couldn't get a job, so he never got certified all the way. Everything just fell right through the floor here, and all that money spent on that vocation school was lost, and he's still, he's back to working on pools, which is a job. It's a job, but he wanted to do this plumbing. So what about vocational technical schools?
Again, having a skill is important, but again, I think it's more important to know what skills have jobs when you get done. You know,
Right.
our state here in New Jersey, there was a time when all our state schools were training teachers at a rapid rate because there was huge growth for teacher industry. And what happened was they overtrained teachers, and I don't remember what year it was. We had a glut of teachers. Almost every state school in New Jersey was a teacher's college to begin with. And then what happened is they kind of overtrained for an industry that couldn't absorb it. So the point is, we know that the plumbers and the construction trade, before 2008, when the stock market was incredible and people were making money hand over fist, people were buying second homes, shore homes, Florida homes, expanding their houses, taking home equity loans out. The construction trade was booming. But when the construction trade died in 2008, it hurt all of them.
Right.
Now, again, many of them will have to find other things to do. I think certifications and higher qualifications make sense. And I think that's really a personal thing where you have to kind of decide, you have to do the research. If I'm going to do this, is there jobs? There's a lot of training grants right now where a lot of these schools are putting people into training grants, but there's no guarantee of jobs at the other end. So
Right,
now, again,
because-
you're training, technology people will talk about healthcare, that there's all these jobs in healthcare. Well, the truth of healthcare is the jobs they have are all getting traded down to lower paid jobs too. So to go out and get all kinds of training to be a radiologist or to be whatever other, technical schools might train people on is just, again, spending money that may not produce anything for you. So it's kind of important, again, not to become a victim and to kind of know your business and know your industry so that if you take the time and money to do it, you're going to end up with at least a fighting chance to get reemployed come the other end.
Yeah, there's other things that you have to look at with this. If you're looking to switch up and maybe go for education, right now the medical field, everybody's going to that because the greatest generation, of course, is they're all seniors. I mean, my husband is 82 years old. He fought in Korea. Okay, so they're let's be honest. We're going to be honest here, people, and it's hard to hear, but in the next 10 years, most of them are going to be gone. And so now you're looking at a drop in the need for so many medical people, healthcare, in-home services, because, not my parents had 3 children. I had 3 children. My grandparents had 6 children. So the reality is that this next generation going up, there aren't as many of us that are going to be there as there are now in the healthcare systems. So right there, people working in the healthcare system now that are working, they're pretty well situated. So there's not going to be a lot of jobs opening up over the next 10, 15 years in those. So you have to be mindful of, is there going to be a need for what you're doing, for what you're pursuing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very important. That's a good point. I gave that information earlier about the Generation X below the baby boomers is 17% less. So when they start getting into the core of this healthcare, and then we know just from everything that's going on with healthcare today in the country, the amount of reduction in spending is going to be unbelievable. So clearly, from a government, from an insurance side standpoint, so clearly, it's going to be a more difficult market, even though right now, and probably for the last 5 years, everybody's been touting how great an industry it is,
Yeah. I mean, you see the commercials all the time. I'm working as a dental person. I'm working as this. I'm working at that. I got to tell you, my granddaughter had her braces done like 3-4 years ago, and it was $20,000.
Right.
But who's got that now when half of the state is out of work?
In most industries, no matter what industry you were, when the economy got bad, you were forced to tighten your belt.
Right.
And of course, healthcare, I don't believe, did that. If anything, they probably gone in the other direction. And then the whole educational system, the whole idea of colleges, what they cost, if they're putting your student through school $40,000 a year, and at the end of 4 years, they're not really equipped to go get a job, or there's no jobs to match the skills they just learned, there's a real issue here. Like, there's some accountability that has to come. I think we're starting to hear this out of Washington, that, you know, colleges have kind of continued to raise their fees pretty unabated through a bad economy. Part of what I want to try to do is get more involved with colleges. We have a program at Montclair State where we're bringing outside speakers in to speak to the college students, knowing that they're going to have a hard time with jobs. And I would love to do some work in really retraining a lot of the career services people. Because, again, just like my members, many of the people who work in this field are outdated and are talking about what you did for a job 10, 15 years ago. And if that's what they're teaching students today, they're not really equipping those students properly. I look at LinkedIn. I look at their LinkedIn profiles.
Let me just interject there.
Yeah, sure.
College students are being told now to start wooing job placement in their freshman year.
Right.
No more of this. And I met today a young man here in Old Bridge, New Jersey, because I voted today, and he graduated in May. He graduated in May, and he has not been able to find any work, but he just started sending out resumes and such since he's out of school. But tonight, as I was researching last-minute stuff, one of the biggest mistakes is college students waiting till they graduate to woo companies to take them. They should be doing this when they first start freshmen or even in high school. When I was in high school, I already had a job with Revlon waiting for me when I graduated.
But the other thing today, college students need to do internships and work in their summer jobs if they can get into companies with their fields, you know, where they're getting some experience that could be valuable on that resume. I think, again, they have to keep in mind they're competing with all the other college students. If all the other college students went off on vacation every summer and didn't work, they could be the student who stands out if they actually got to work in the field, let's say, even if it's an internship and it's free, or even volunteering. If they get to do work in the field of choice that they want to go for, I think companies look more highly on college students who have shown responsibility the whole time versus the ones that, you know, kind of had a 4-year party and then have a degree and now say, okay, now I'm going to start looking for work. I think many college students are totally clueless as to how difficult the market is. And I think even in technology, you know, we always think that the people who are out of touch in technology are the older people. But there's many technology skills that college students don't have. And, you know, you may know some technology. It doesn't mean you know all of it. So understanding what technology is important for the industry or job that you're going to do is very critical. And if you didn't get it in college, you're going to need to learn it to be able to be attractive to that employer.
And you're going to need to be able to adapt to something similar but different. And again, it goes back to that comfort zone. You're going to have, and I know it sucks to the high heavens. God Almighty screams it in Zion, but nobody likes jobs that suck, that, you know, you're working under a total dweeb, but it's a job. You need to eat, you need to pay your bills, and that's just the way life is. So sometimes you just got to suck it up, and even though the guy above you might be a total moron, you need to smile and just swallow it, because you got to protect yourself and your family, and that starts by being able to provide for them and to provide for yourself, even if you don't have a family. You know, and that just sometimes means you got to learn to suck up. You got to learn to deal. You've got to learn to think outside your box and move outside your comfort zone. And you know, that's just the way it is. I think that there's been a lot of trouble with jobs here because you do get the girls and the boys who just skim through high school and think, well, I'll just get a job. And those jobs now that I see, when I was a child, and God, I am dating myself here, but after school, during the summer, once it started March, you went and worked on the local farmer's farm, and you helped them, and you got paid by them. Those jobs now are all being done by illegal immigrants who come in. They work for the day for $100 a day. Our own children aren't willing to work at these menial jobs. You've got a lot of people who work one day at Wendy's and say, customers are so rude and I don't want to work that job. It's a job. Yeah. It's a job. It's not perfect, but it's a goddamn job.
Working for that bad boss is a skill, believe it or not, because you're probably going to have several bad bosses in your career. Nobody's going to be that fortunate to have great bosses their whole career. And we had a career session last night with this Absolute Abby, and she flat out said, believe it or not, that's one of the benefits of an experienced person, that you've learned how to deal with those type of situations. And you didn't just freak out or walk out the door. You cope with it. You learned how to adjust to it, and you worked around it. And even employers know that everybody they have working for them aren't great bosses either. So in a way, learning how to work in a bad situation is an actual acquired skill that could be valuable for you later down the road. Yeah.
We have to go to break again. This show is really moving fast. Yeah. This is the last break for the last thing. And it's going to be Lou Reed, Coney Island Baby. And we're playing Lou Reed because he passed away on the 27th. He was a one-hit wonder, but he was a poet and a real character, and we wanted to remember him, so we're going to go to it.
This is Michelle Tomlinson, the Scream Queen, and I listen to GameCon Radio. Why? Because it rocks.
Coney Island Baby. And we have like 20 minutes left of the show, and we do have another question coming from Finland. If you do free work, if somebody's doing free work, does that take jobs from others? I don't exactly know what that means, but
that's a good question. I don't know. Here's the thing: many small business can't afford to pay anybody. Right. So in that case, I don't know, but yeah, it's a possibility. That's again where you'd have to think about if a major company says, we've got volunteer positions. If they've chosen to make it volunteer, they weren't going to pay anybody to do it anyway. So I don't see there's actually Major League Baseball's doing something. I just saw a job today, not a job, a volunteer position to help them with the Australian Baseball League. So again, it was kind of odd why Major League Baseball, with all the money they have, would be developing an Australian Baseball League and having volunteers be the people they're trying to fill these jobs with. Unless it's just in the beginning, it's a volunteer that could lead to a full-time job. But no, I don't know. And I know Europe's got very different rules and laws, too, about employment. I know in France and England, each one of them are very different. So the local laws may dictate that, too, whether they, in fact, are taking a job or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here I think one of the big problems here is we went through, and I'm going to say this, we went through, after Vietnam, a lot of parents really spoiled their kids rotten. Mm-hmm. And it came down to my son isn't going to pick, crops after school, right. And my daughter's not going to work in a Wendy's after school. And so you got people taking these jobs, and they were originally where young people learned their work ethics. You had to be there on time. Yes, it was a crappy little after-school job, but it taught you to be there on time, to be responsible, to have to learn to make decisions. These were all parts of after-school and weekend jobs that our young people do not understand at all anymore. That the young people have no concept of of being responsible in that way. And now you've got illegals, and I see them in Mattawan all the time by the 7-Eleven. There's 40 of them. The local farmers from the area go there, or contractors, or whoever they are, and they pick 10 of them. They pay them $100 a day. There's no insurance they pay them. So, because you've got people who won't work those jobs, these illegals are taking advantage of it. They are smart. They're taking advantage of it. They're taking jobs. But you can't blame them if an American citizen isn't willing to take those jobs. I'll friggin' work for $100 a day without insurance, if I can do the work. But a lot of people won't. They'll say, hey, I'm not going to work in the lousy weather, because Americans have become very spoiled, haven't they?
Yeah, I think that's true. And again, this to me is, even for the younger people we talked about earlier, this is a way they can differentiate themselves. Because I think, again, our generation, the baby boomer generation, was known for hard work ethic, loyalty to companies. That's not typically descriptive words for somebody who's young in the job market today. So the fact is, if you can demonstrate those as a young person, you're going to stand out against your competition. Again, let's keep in mind that there's competition there. The whole immigration thing, I mean, this goes on in every city. I saw pools of people in Morristown every morning, same kind of thing. Contractors would pick them up as temporary labor. And, it's going on everywhere. The whole immigration thing, I guess, is the next thing Washington will be dealing with. But there's no doubt, the question is, are they really, would nobody take those jobs, or would those jobs have to pay more? Are they getting away with paying low labor rates because they can, because those people are there? And is that business still making money? So again, it's kind of like businesses got spoiled with improved profit margins over a bad economy. Normally in a bad economy, things tighten up for everybody, not just some of us. So that, we don't really know who the real villain is in this whole drill. But certainly it's more than just one direction. There's a possibility that the businessman could afford to pay more and might actually be able to hire college kids out of school or out of technical schools to do that type of work if they paid a fair rate,
And there's another thing she's bringing up, pensions. If you're working off the books, excuse me, Teddy, I think, is one of the last generations that'll actually he still had his pension. Right. Most companies have changed over in the last 15 years to 401ks.
Right.
So if you're working off the books and not paying into a 401k, it's not going to be there when you're done.
No, right.
When you're ready to retire, there's not going to be anything there. Right. And that's another huge problem with the way outsourcing and taking part-time jobs is going. Unless you take the initiative to put that money into your 401k, right, it's not going to be there. It's just not going to be there. So that's another huge problem with working off the books or that kind of thing. So the first thing people have to do is they have to learn to network with people in fields that they stand a chance to get a job in, something that their particular, you have to assess your qualifications. What do you have to offer, right?
Yeah, you need a marketing plan. I mean, you really have to be targeted, because here's the whole thing. If you say, I'm going to look for a job, I don't care what I'm doing, there's no focus in that process. There's no way to go work against who am I going to network to if I'm saying I'll work anywhere. So without a focus, you can't really do the other things you need to do. So we have a document we give everybody in the beginning. It's called How to Begin a Job Search. There's nothing special there. It's very basic, common sense logic. But step one is to define what kind of job are you going to look for, who are the companies, how far do you want to drive, all the things that come into play here. Because once you've developed that list of target companies, now you're going to put your research and your energy into those companies. You're going to put your networking effort into those companies. If there's millions of people on LinkedIn, you'd have no plan of who am I going to go talk to if you don't have your original plan of where do you want to go work or what kind of jobs you want. And then, yes, we really recommend highly that everybody be honest with themselves and figure out what skills are they missing. Because if you're missing a skill that's essential today, you're never going to get hired. So if you're not willing to improve that skill, again, you're going to have a problem. If you're willing to relocate, that can play a role in helping you maybe get a job better, easier. If you're not willing to relocate, then you better know that, it's going to make it harder for you. So we kind of want to educate people to be realistic about what their job expectations are. And even those people who hate their jobs, I think you can look for a job when you have a job. So we tell people, take the job just to get on the books. Having a job is better than having a gap in your resume and being what they call long-term unemployment. There's some employers who, if they see you've been out of work for a year or 2 years, won't even talk to you. And it's not legal, it's not proper, but it's a reality. There's no way to enforce prejudice in the marketplace, like discrimination against older people. There's no way to enforce it when there's only one job for every 10 people. It doesn't matter what laws are on the books. How are you going to prove that you were better than the other 9 candidates that they chose from? So it's a very difficult environment today.
All right, let me ask this. If someone had a basis in engineering electronics, what would they be trying to network with? What kind of people would they be trying to?
Well, they'd want to know where are those jobs, what industries hire those people. It's good to have mentors sometimes. Again, you don't want to talk to somebody that did the business 20 years ago. You want to find out who's there now. So you could actually take that job title that you want, that exists, that you've seen listings for it, and you can search that in LinkedIn and find people who have that listed as their occupation. So you can actually start talking to people in that industry. We also encourage that if there are industry groups and associations, that's a very strong place to stay current with what's going on. Most industry magazines are always talking about the future of what their industry has. They'll talk about what jobs are dying, what jobs are growing. They'll talk about what companies are growing, what companies are not growing. So there's incredible information. I mean, one of the things everybody has today that we didn't have 15 and 20 years ago is the internet. There's nothing that you can't learn if you take the time and do intelligent searches. And in a pretty short period of time, you can learn almost anything you need to learn about any job, any company, and any industry.
I'm typing in the chat because I'm saying, so they would search LinkedIn and try to make connections, because maybe on an off chance some company might be willing to help them finish their schooling, or they might hire them and help with financing more education towards that, or is that passé, that doesn't happen anymore?
It may happen with some companies. Listen, I think that there still are progressive companies and smart companies that believe if they invest in their employees, there's a major reward for them. My fear, and I couldn't quote any stats, my fear is they're fewer and far between. What's happened today is this whole investment banking kind of trend of buying companies. I mean, they buy them to resell them and make lots of money. And they make lots of money because they cut costs. They cut employees. They downscale it. In the old days, again, I hate using the word old days, but when I got my MBA back in 1982. And when we studied for our MBA, the whole role of equity and an investment banker was that normally a company wouldn't have the finances they needed to grow. They wouldn't have management that was capable of running the business into the next level. And the investment banker came, he would buy the company, they would use his money, they would improve the business, hire better managers, invest in new equipment, whatever they had to do. And they got paid a reward for doing that, and they usually got out of the company within 3 to 5 years. In many cases, they might do an IPO and put the company back on the stock market. But when they got done, the company was a better company for them having been there, and people's jobs grew and there was more job growth. Now it seems that most of the investments you see done are to buy a company that's similar to company A that you already own take their products over and fire everybody that's working for Company B and dump them all in the street. Or actually liquidate assets, sell real estate, do things that I call undertakers. So when they get done, the company no longer exists. And they've lost the value to the community and to all the stakeholders, the vendors, and everybody that dealt with that company. And again, there should be a law against it. If you and I said, hey, there's a beautiful park down the street here, let's go get that park, buy it, and build housing and make lots of money, and now there's no longer a park there, they would throw us in jail if we tried to do that. Unfortunately, today, there's investment bankers buying companies that are historic companies that maybe, you know, got stale or fell out of their market by bad management. And instead of fixing them and making them healthy and making them better for growth, they're just grabbing whatever dollars, and a handful of people make all the money. And when they leave, thousands of people are out of work.
Right.
And that's happening over and over and over again in America. And that's part of the shrinkage of what's going on. And we need to acknowledge it and to address it somehow.
Right. I want you to tell everybody again where your site is. I don't care what country you're living with. And this is information that can help anybody who's out of a job and trying to figure out how to get back into the job market, trying to maybe update their information. Networking seems to be the new way to go. So tell them where they can find your site again.
Yeah, our website is www.nhnUSA.org. And there's connections to me there, and I'm willing to really interact with anybody on email who has any questions of me. And it's all about helping each other. And if I help you, maybe you can help me make a connection and get me back to work.
Right. And I want to thank you so much for coming on. I hope it helps someone. If we help one person, it's worth the 2 hours.
I want to thank you for having us. It was a very nice experience.
Thank you. I hope it was. All you have to do is hang up, and when it's on podcast, I'll drop it off in your Facebook so you can copy it and download it, okay?
That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Have a great week. All right. Good night.
You too. Next week, we're going to have Warren F. Disbrow. He is an independent filmmaker in New Jersey. He has haunted sleigh ride movies. They're like slasher movies, guys. You go out on the hayride and everybody dies at the end of it, that kind of thing. And he's going to be coming on to talk about sleigh ride and his hayride movies. And then a good friend of ours, Carolyn Quinn, who is the author of Mama Rose's Turn, the mother of Gypsy Rose Lee, is coming back on the 19th. And then we're going to have our Thanksgiving show on the 26th. And Ansel Hollingsworth, director of Dr. Mabuse, is coming on December 3rd. And then our favorite psychic, Sherilyn, is coming back on the 10th of December. So we are rocking. We've got a full slate going on. I hope everybody has a good week. I hope that you visit John's site. Let me just say it again once more. Neighbors, www.neighbors-helpingneighbors-.com. That's it. And if you look for John Fuggazi on Facebook, or Neighbors-Helping Neighbors on my Facebook, you can connect to him from there because he's a friend on my Facebook, and I have Neighbors Helping Neighbors liked on my Facebook, and there's just so much information that maybe can help you or a loved one find a job. And with that, I'm going to say God bless you all. I love you all, and God bless you. I hope everybody can get jobs, and I hope things turn around for 2004.
Where over the rainbow birds fly.
Thank you for visiting me at my lair. You can always contact me at www.asylumsgate.com. Again, thank you for visiting, and God bless you and yours.
If you're gonna, throw stones, don't live in glass houses. If you're gonna go out and get drunk, don't call the police to try to have everybody else arrested. Chances are you're going to get arrested with them. And there's a sex scandal in Tempe, Arizona. Apparently, one of the former detective, Jessica Deaver Jacoots, a 13-year-old veteran of the police force, had to resign because she was undercover on a drug investigation, and when they finally got everybody and nailed it, they found out she'd been sleeping with the one guy that they were investigating, and he told them that not only was she sleeping with him, but she was keeping them apprised of the investigation. I hope she's not surprised that she got fired from this job. Anyway, they immediately suspended her, and she's gone to court, and she's going to end up, at the moment, they're not charging her with anything, but she's obviously done being a police officer. I don't make this stuff up, I just report it. And the truth is out there. This is rather cool. The Natural History Museum of London has now a special group investigating their X-Files, as they call them. And these are things that are brought into the museum that nobody has any idea what it is, where it came from, like the slime that was found at the Ham Wall Nature Reserve in Somerset, England. They still don't know what it is. They've been doing all kinds of tests on it. They said that, it's got all kinds of DNA in it, but they have no idea what this mucus is. And all I can say is, yeah, that's my first idea, is to go out for a walk in a nature reserve, find a big load of some kind of guck, and then just pick it up and take it to a museum. That's my idea of an ideal Sunday, Some of the things they have found is somebody brought in a skull a long time ago and they thought it was a saber-toothed cat from, the dinosaurs. It turned out to be a Chinese water deer, which kind of makes me wonder.
The opinions and views expressed in the following presentation do not necessarily reflect those of GCR Progressive Internet Radio Management, staff, or our affiliates.
Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore.
Welcome to Mo Banshee's Lair, Visionary Talk Radio on GCR Progressive Internet Radio. Fair rock in your world.
And welcome to Mo Banshee's Lair on GCR Internet Radio. Tonight we have a self-help type of a show on how to make the best of your job searches, and I'm over the moon because we have John Fagazzie on, and John is the founder of Neighbors Helping Neighbors. It's a job search support group in New Jersey, but these tips are going to be so good for everybody because you just apply them to your state and yourself, and I think it's going to be a really helpful job, show tonight for job searching and trying to land, jobs and that. Anyway, they're telling me they can hear me, so we're all good to go in the chat, which is why I love the chat. Big news right now. Lou Reed died October 27th, and he's one of those guys who's known as a one-hit wonder, even though he had an incredible impact on music during the 60s, 70s, 80s. Everybody remembers him for Take a Walk on the Wild Side. He was a bisexual guy who really pushed some envelopes when he wrote that and he recorded that. In his honor tonight, we're going to play two of his songs. One will be Take a Walk on the Wild Side, and the other is going to be Coney Island Baby. And we're also going to play Mandy Patinkin. I'll bet you half of you had no idea. Mandy Patinkin is a rather talented singer. If you saw Yentl, you figured it out that he's not Mario Lanza, but he is very talented, and he has a song a recording of Brother, Can You Spare a Dime, which is perfect for tonight's show. It's just very perfect for tonight's show. So there are music things tonight, and of course you all know how it goes with me. We have a bit of crazy butt news, and let me bring up some of it while I'm sitting here lost. Saving Mr. Banks, new Disney movie, is coming out in December, and it's about Walt Disney trying to convince the author of Mary Poppins series to let him make a movie about it. And in the story, you find out who Mr. Banks is. Tom Hanks stars in it. I'm sure this is going to be like a wonderful, wonderful movie. Jeremy Irons, something, Night Train to Lisbon, that's coming out in November, and it's about a Latin teacher who saves a girl from killing herself and then finds a book she had on her on the ground, and it changes his life really hugely. Also, he's got Trashed, and that's a passion of his, and it's about how we've trashed our world and what we're going to need to do to reclaim it and stop from killing our world. So Trashed is going to be out on DVD, and I think they'll be putting it somewhere on the internet, but that's the name of that. It's Trashed, and it's how we've destroyed our planet. So two good movies that I'm looking forward to. Japan. What a group of people Japanese people are. Of all the problems in the world, their biggest concern is that women don't look disgusting eating a hamburger. So somebody in Japan made this napkin that you can hold up and it looks like a girl's face. So when they open their mouth really, really wide, you don't see that they're opening their mouth. It's just really funny. Where this Chinese water deer came from in England, and how its skull ended up in the mud someplace. So that's kind of intriguing. There's a lot of stuff, misdiagnosed stuff, things that they're trying to find out what it all is. And check out their site. And again, that's the Modern Museum of History in London. They call them their own version of the X-Files. It's a unit of experts who specialize in unraveling the origins of mysterious slimes, animals, and objects found in England. So I thought that was pretty cool. Our guest tonight, John Fagazzie, has a site called Neighbors Helping Neighbors. And John, welcome to the Lair.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I'm hoping everybody's going to let me know if they can hear John. Okay. I think everything's going well.
Great.
Why did you start Neighbors Helping Neighbors?
Well, actually, at the time I was out of work. This was back in 2010. And I was doing the job search like I always had in the past when I was out of work. And I found that things just weren't working like they had the time before. And I was working by myself, doing all the internet, applying for jobs on the internet, searching all the job sites. And things just weren't happening. And it started becoming, depressing and frustrating, and really didn't understand it. So I actually had seen an article in a local paper about a woman wanted to start a group to get together. So that's something I had never done before, and I went out and attended the group. And I'm a very positive person, so of course I went to the group, and what it really turned out to be was 5 or 6 people who spent the whole meeting complaining how bad things are. Well, clearly we all knew how bad things were. We didn't really want to hear about it all night. And I actually left the meeting feeling more negative than I was going into the meeting because, again, I've always seen myself very positive. So this group kind of held meetings once a month. They had 2 or 3 of them. The woman who led it had found a job, so it wasn't really organized. There was no structure to it. But myself and one other gentleman had attended all the meetings. And the last night she came in, it was just me, him, and her, and she says, listen, I can't do this anymore.
You know, we've got the nuclear meltdown in Japan. We've got animal abuse. We've got garbage in the Pacific that's just floating around like its own continent. And they're worried about the young ladies not looking terrible when they eat food. So this napkin, you put it around your hamburger, hold it up to your face, and it just looks like your face. It doesn't look like a hamburger. So, you know, who says that the Japanese are not really worried about what's going on in the world, right? George Romero, he's the godfather of the modern zombie, Night of the Living Dead. You know, that's his baby. He sat down with Andrew Burns and discussed his career in zombies. And praise God, he said something that I agree with totally. He said when they asked him to do a couple of the episodes for The Walking Dead, he says he didn't want to be any part of it. Basically, it's a soap opera with a zombie occasionally. And I agree. That's exactly what, in the comic books, it's a book. You're reading it, that kind of thing. But on the TV, it's a soap opera. It's just a weekly installment, and you watch these very dysfunctional people who are busy having, the girl and the boy are having it on, and they smell like dead skunks. And, I mean, it's just ridiculous. I don't even watch the show anymore. It was good when it started, but now it's just turning into this tangle of all kinds of personal relationships. And I personally am rooting for the zombies. Let's just kill them all. Fort Lauderdale. A Broward woman faces several charges after she allegedly called 911 to report drunk people at a bar. The problem is she was one of the people at the bar, and she just didn't like the other people being drunk there. So Mary Jaggers had to go to court Tuesday morning this morning. She's charged with misusing the emergency system, possession of hydrocodone, and reporting falsely that there's a bunch of drunk people in the bar. She called 911 6 times to complain about intoxicated people, and she's one of them. She was hammered.